In late 2024, Syria witnessed a military development that, for most Syrians, was pure fantasy. Syrian opposition factions launched a sweeping offensive, seizing the city of Aleppo in a short time. Just days later, the Battle of Hama began, and it didn't last long. Its liberation signaled that Assad's days were numbered. Then the Syrian cities began to fall one after another. Dara, Swaida, Homs, Latakia, Tartus, Deir el-Zor, and finally, the factions reached Damascus, which offered no resistance at all. Joy swept across all Syrian cities, but as soon as the guns fell silent, the rumble of empty stomachs rose. The economic crisis hit like a slap, shaking everyone from the euphoria of victory. By early 2025, the average monthly income of a Syrian citizen had dropped to around $13, placing the country among the lowest income levels in the world. Between 2000 and 2011, electricity supply in Syria was stable, averaging about 22 hours per day. However, with the outbreak of the revolution and the regime's refusal to implement the necessary reforms, electricity availability has dropped sharply, reaching now at best about 4 hours a day. The situation is literally catastrophic. Today, there are still around 7.4 million internally displaced people in Syria who want to return to their hometowns and villages. Similarly, there are more than 4.4 million Syrian refugees in neighboring countries, 2.7 million in Turkey, 722,000 in Lebanon, and 546,000 in Jordan, millions of whom live in tents. Bringing them back is not merely an option, but a national necessity. Inside the country, the Syrian interim government, led by Ahmed al-Shara, faces challenges on several fronts. Al-Sheikh al-Hajri, leader of the Druze community, refuses official recognition and restricts state institutions from entering Swaida. The Kurdish-led SDF, with roots linked to Turkey's PKK, controls 3 provinces, Raqqa, Hasaka, and a large part of Deir ez-Zor, and seeks to impose a separatist project that does not represent the native population. Remnants of the former regime remain active, launching attacks when opportunities arise, while some extremist groups have targeted Christian communities, seeking to highlight weaknesses on the national stage. Public opinion in Syria has shifted dramatically during the years of the revolution. The rhetoric of resistance no longer resonates, and many now implicitly view peace with Israel as an acceptable path forward. But what is the secret behind this major change? To understand this historic shift, we need to go back to 1970, when Hafez al-Assad seized power. For 30 long years, hostility toward Israel was not just rhetoric. It was the lifeline that kept his authoritarian rule alive. He used the conflict with Israel as an internal political shield, hiding behind it his repression and monopoly on power. Under his rule, in 1979, the United States added Syria to its list of state sponsors of terrorism due to its support for groups like Hezbollah and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Syria was the very first country to be placed on this list, a designation crafted with Damascus in mind. This was one of the core reasons behind the severe economic crisis that struck Syria in the 80s. At that time, buying bananas was a dream for Syrians. A box of tissues was a rare luxury, and cars were reserved for the elites. Yet Syrians clung to the official narrative, convinced that hunger and poverty were the price that had to be paid for the sake of Palestine. After coming to power in 2000, Bashar al-Assad maintained his father's policies and deepened Syria's ties with the Iranian Axis and Hamas, while supporting jihadi factions in Iraq that carried out attacks against US forces. He played a central role in the assassination of the late Lebanese Prime Minister Rafiq al-Hariri. All of this led to unprecedented sanctions on Syria. After the fall of Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian people are striving to free themselves from the crushing weight of sanctions, and if peace with Israel is the price, they are willing to pay it. But why have Syrians turned against Hamas and Hezbollah? Well, here is the thing. But at the beginning, it is important to understand Syria's ethnic and religious composition. This is key to understand how Syria ended up where it is today. Arabs make up about 80 to 85% of the population, spread across most of Syria. Kurds account for roughly 10%, concentrated in scattered areas in the north. Other ethnic groups, including Armenians and Turkmen, together make up around 5% of the population. From a religious perspective, about 70% of Syrians are Sunni Muslims, regarded as the backbone of the nation. Christians make up around 10%, though their numbers are believed to have declined during the war, and they live in small communities across the country. Alawites also constitute about 10%, mostly concentrated in the coastal regions, while the Druze, around 3% of the population, live primarily in the south, especially in Suwaida. During Hafez al-Assad's rule, the Alawites had little presence in the economic sphere, which was largely dominated by Sunni Muslims. This balance helped preserve a degree of relative stability. But with Bashar al-Assad's rise to power, a second generation of Alawite elites emerged, seeking a larger share of economic influence. Over time, Sunnis were gradually pushed aside. On the other hand, the Syrian diplomatic corps showed a clear sectarian imbalance. About 60% of senior officials in the foreign ministry were Alawites, while Sunnis accounted for no more than 10%. Figures like Rami Makhlouf, Samer Foz, and Mohammed Hamsho took control of key sectors of the economy, a grip that bred resentment and set the stage for the tensions that would later erupt. With the outbreak of the Syrian revolution, the Syrian people took to the streets demanding reforms and the departure of Bashar al-Assad. As the regime's security grip tightened, Syrians were forced to take up arms and began liberating towns and villages one after another. The regime began to falter, and at a pivotal moment, the so-called resistance forces intervened, not to support the Syrian people, but to back their ally, Bashar al-Assad. With the intervention of Hezbollah, Russia, and Palestinian militias, the regime managed to regain control over many Syrian areas, leaving them destroyed and their inhabitants displaced. Syrians felt betrayed. After all the support they had given to the resistance, they were stabbed in the back. This opened a deep rift that helped shape the situation we see today. Another issue that matters deeply to Syrians and pushes them to think about peace and strive for it is technology. The average internet speed in Syria has not improved at all over the past 10 years, and even a simple comparison with countries like Saudi Arabia or Jordan clearly reveals the severity of the problem. Today, Syrians working with foreign companies are blocked from learning or using Western technologies. Even in daily life, they cannot access app stores like Google Play or Apple Store, platforms like GitHub, or AI tools like ChatGPT, which remain off-limits to this day. Syrians dream of being able to access websites, type the name of their country, and find it listed among the options. What is normal for people around the world feels like a distant hope for Syrians. But there are other issues on Syrians' minds, chief among them the unity of the country. The Kurdish-led SDF, though rooted in Turkey, controls 3 governorates, Raqqa, Hasaka, and much of Deir ez-Zor, areas with an Arab majority. It blocks residents from returning and bans the Syrian flag, a clear attempt to impose a separatist project that does not represent the native population. Peace with Israel could provide Syria with the international backing it needs to dismantle this control and reunify the country. Food insecurity, the collapse of the educational system from schools to universities, and the restoration of security are all urgent challenges. The government has neither the luxury of time nor the privilege of delay. Achieving these goals depends on lifting sanctions, something nearly impossible without US approval. President Trump's conditions are clear: joining the Abraham Accords, aligning with the Western camp, and cutting ties with Iran and Russia. The government appears determined to move in this direction, supported by popular sentiment that sees peace and openness to the West as the path to a better future. A new alliance is taking shape, described as aiming to promote peace, encourage development, and build a stable economy for the peoples of the region. Syria has shifted its course, with current leaders appearing more rational and pragmatic. Their approach seems to center on realistic politics, strategic alliances, and organized efforts that could help restore stability and regional standing. Hi friends, creating this video isn't easy. For example, designing just the first 30 seconds can take several hours of work straight. Your support through subscribing and liking the video means a lot for a small channel like ours, and even a $1 monthly subscription helps us greatly. Thank you for staying with us until now. See you in the next video.